Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. We are going to discuss as the situation between Iran and Israel continues to escalate. This is the fifth day of the conflict as Israel resorted to the unilateral and illegal aggression against the Iran's sovereignty and territorial integrity, targeting some strategic assets over there, targeting some top military leadership as well as nuclear scientists. In retaliatory measures, what Iran has did, it has entered into the 9th phase of the Operation True Promise, and their top officials are saying, the IRGC top officials are saying that this particular phase is going to be longer and intense if Israel continues to go on with its aggression against Iran's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Also saying that this 9th phase of operation is going to be of hybrid nature, as it is a combination of the long-range ballistic missiles as well as drones. We have also seen US President Donald Trump leaving G7 summit earlier, headed back to Washington, saying there was important thing to deal with, and then he was later on asked about whether he was working for a ceasefire regarding this particular tension between Iran and Israel. He rather said about a real end, not a ceasefire. And you also alluded to this particular aspect, giving up entirely is okay. Too earlier, he had issued a warning to the people in Tehran to evacuate immediately. We have also seen this particular tension increasing. The Iranian broadcasting building was also targeted in Israeli brutality, and there has been condemnation by International Federation of Journalists regarding that, which has termed it targeting the journalists as being a war crime. And also the foreign minister of Iran has said that this is the manifestation of desperation and cowardice when it comes to Israel targeting the broadcasting building of Iranian Republic. We'll also be talking about there has been a statement on part of Kremlin which says that Russia is ready to provide mediation services if necessary, but we see reluctance on part of Israel. Also, there is a statement on the part of the Chinese. Chinese President Xi Jinping has been quoted as saying that he is deeply worried, and China opposes any act that infringes upon the sovereignty, security and territorial integrity of other countries. We are going to take of all these important aspects and developments regarding this Israeli-Iran conflict as the situation is unfolding up for discussion in today's show. For that, we are honored to be joined in the studio by Dr. Salma Malik, foreign affairs expert. Dr. Salma, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. On the video link at the same time, we are honored to be joined by Lt.Gen retired Raza Mohammed Khan, senior analyst and former president at the National Defense University. General Raza Khan, thank you very much for your time also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Dr. Salma, if you allow me, let me begin the discussion with General Raza Khan. General Raza Khan, by looking at what the statements have been coming from all the sides, specifically talking about that statement by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, that the attacks were fully coordinated with the US. We have also seen the US, its State Department, and even President Donald Trump saying that it was the US was not directly involved in this particular unilateral attack of Israel on Iran. We have also seen Iran saying that the Israelis and President Trump wouldn't have anticipated such a strong response from the Iranian side. How are you looking at this?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First of all, I think there's a lot of contradiction in the statements of the Israeli Prime Minister and what President Trump has been saying. And obviously in the G7 meeting, when he left abruptly, and also asked Iranian citizens to vacate Tehran. I think that was a matter of great concern, I think, for the world itself. because he echoed what Israel had already been saying. But subsequently, I think uh, this order or this contention was not followed up, and that's a matter of some relief, I think, for everyone. But you saw that opinion within the G7 again was divided, which asked for an immediate ceasefire. But I think the US did not accept that, and it had its own version of saying that there should actually be an end to this war on the terms of the United States and Israel. Which brings me, to actually what are the politico-military objectives of Israel and the United States? The one of them is to denuclearize Iran, and I think both are cooperating on that. And I think as far as that aim is concerned, the United States is providing every support to Israel, although most of it is indirect. And I think this has been clarified earlier that it will be an indirect support because Israel has been their ally, so they are supporting them. The second aim, of course, is probably only related to what Netanyahu wants, and that is to either change the present government and the regime in Iran, or at least to discredit it. I think that aim is not possible because Israel doesn't have the wherewithal for doing that unless the United States supports it directly. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes on. My view is that instead of this happening, I think what Israel is doing and what the United States is doing is going to actually unite the people of Iran, and it may actually support the people's, behind their government. So it is going to be counterproductive. But I think one of the other aim of Netanyahu is purely a political objective about which I think not much is being said, and that is that only a few weeks back there was a very strong vote of no confidence coming in the Israeli Knesset against him. That was actually postponed for the reason that Iran is just a few days away from its nuclear capability, weaponizing its capability. It was postponed, and then he achieved that aim. And we'll have to wait and see what happens after this war ends, if at all. Of course, Israel also knows that although it is an undeclared nuclear power, their nuclear weapons are not usable against Iran for the simple reason that I think it will cause too much of destruction, not only to Iran, to innocent civilians, but also the fallout of even the small nuclear weapons are going to damage, I think, all the countries neighboring Iran, including some 35,000 to 40,000 US troops which are in the area, some in Qatar, some in Bahrain, and some in other places. So they know that their nuclear weapons are non-usable, and unless they use those weapons, they are not in a position, to destroy whatever Iran has achieved so far. So what they have achieved so far is to destroy above the ground facilities, Iranian nuclear facilities, but not the ones which are below the ground. So that is the true position. And I think
For that, General Raza Khan, and for that to destroy the underground facilities, Israel requires the bunker buster bombs, which Israel doesn't have. It is the US only that has those bunker buster bombs.
I think even the bunker buster bombs will not be able, to take out some of the facilities which are, I think, very deep inside and, under, very heavy concretes. I think probably in the range of 70 to 80 meters below the ground. Very difficult. So we'll have to wait and see what happens in that. Uh, at the same time, opinion in the US is sharply divided between the Make America Great group, which sees this war as the United States being dragged into it by Netanyahu, and which is going to cause a lot of problems for the United States, both economic, political, as well as security. And others, who actually always desired that Israel and America both should reduce or at least finish Iranian capabilities in the nuclear and in its other
So what,
capabilities.
Raza Khan, what are going to be the likely options at this particular point in time at the hands of President Donald Trump, given that particular local factor at play at the same time? Especially, there are voices coming from that very mega group also, which are opposed to America being dragged into a direct conflict against Iran. We've also seen that staunch support within the Republicans of supporting Israel. So given all these factors and that pressure and those kind of statements which are coming from Benjamin Netanyahu, amid all these factors at play at the same time simultaneously, what likely options do you think rest with President Trump at the moment?
Well, I think it's going to be a very difficult and a tough decision. He will have to wait and see what is happening in Israel itself, because as we are aware, the diaspora, international diaspora, which has been there in Israel, is now so scared that most of them are immigrating back. They are leaving Israel. I think there is a very big economic factor as well, because there is a flight of investment outside Israel, and Israel knows that. They also are aware that whatever bombs they have, they are not infinite. We have seen that happening, and if it comes to a protracted war, then I think even in the United States will not be able to continuously supply it, because they are doing so in Ukraine as well. But even if it is fighting a war on two fronts, one in Ukraine and the other in Israel, then these weapon systems cannot be produced, I think, in months. They take actually much more long.
Raza Khan, I get your point. Well, last quick remark regarding as to when the RIGC says the damages and the losses inflicted on Israeli regime are far beyond the imagination of Israelis themselves as well as President Trump. How do you make sense of this particular statement? They have also said they have targeted over 540 sites within Israel. And this particular phase of it is going to be more intense and of hybrid nature, a combination of long-range ballistic missiles as well as drones.
Well, I think we'll have to see once all this information is verified, not only from Iran, but what Israel is saying through satellites and other information. I think it will soon come out what is happening. Iran is actually trained for a protected war. You recall it fought for 8 years in the past, against Iraq. And, it has been an empire, and it's got a much larger population than Israel. So it has, the resilience and the capacity to drag the war for a long period. And if that happens, it is going to be a problem, I think, for Israel, the United States, and the rest of the world. And what I believe is that the earlier ceasefire is now arranged. Probably it will benefit Iran, Israel, the United States, the Middle East, and everyone else.
Right, I get your point. Lieutenant General retired Raza Mohammed Khan's here, analyst, former president of the National Defence University. Thank you very much for taking time out for Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. Dr. Salma, now a rail end versus a ceasefire. But looking at this particular statement of President Donald Trump, what sense do you make out of it?
You see, the ceasefire is extremely important at the moment to finish the level of hostilities that are taking place, the amount of death, the craziness that has been unleashed by Israel. But we need to also see this factor that the war that is taking place between the two countries, rather imposed on Iran by Israel at the moment and fully supported by the USA, the Trump's regime, not exactly USA, but the Trump's regime, is a war that has been happening at a very short level, at a very small level from the last 1.5 years. In the last 1 year at least, we have seen several exchange of drones, missiles between the two countries. But this time it was something which was very well thought out, well articulated and patterned, and it has continued for the last 5 days. So hence the pattern is different. But the fact is that the war didn't just start 5 days back. It had started and it was like they would carry out an attack and then Iran would retaliate, Iran would do something, then Israel would retaliate, and now it was a unilateral action by Israel, claiming that they're doing it in self-defense, when the entire world can see that there was nothing threatened in Israel as a result of that.
There is a fear-mongering as far as their understanding perhaps of Iran acquiring the nuclear weapons is concerned. Iran agreed to that very pact with the JCPOA members. It was the US which pulled out and during the first tenure of President Donald Trump.
Iran so far remains a member of NPT, which is the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty.
And it has been repeatedly saying that its nuclear program was for the civilian purposes.
Absolutely. And there's so many countries in the world which have a peaceful nuclear program, not a nuclear weapons program, but a peaceful nuclear program for energy generation for 101 purposes. None of them are being bombed. In fact, the US is backing some of the Muslim world countries for developing their own nuclear program for energy generation, or even they might allow them to develop their own nuclear weapons. But the fact is, which is most unlikely, given the fact that they just want Israel to be one country in the entire region, to have that type of deterrence that none of the countries around it, however friendly they may be to the US, are allowed to yield that type of power or keep Israel hostage to that type of negotiations. The very fact that Israel perceives that Iran is thinking of developing nuclear weapons does not provide Israel with any type of license to carry out what it has done.
What it has done.
So, I mean, you cannot just have people like Modi or people like Netanyahu who wake up with this crazy idea and they start bombing the world to kingdom come. This then leaves no space for rule of law. This leaves no space for the UN or any of its instruments. Basically, then that simply makes it all a joke and makes the international world order a very selective world order, which is kosher for some countries and not kosher for the others. And any country such as Israel can get away with murder and no one is going to blink an eye because Israel does not agree to this thing or that thing, or it has a complete support of the USA. So it doesn't work this way. So a ceasefire at the moment has to be in order. The US basically saying that Iran must start talking and they must start doing this is a bit of an unlikely demand.
They were already in negotiations, and this particular aggression happened.
Negotiation throughout. Iran was open to any type of talks. Now, if you are having a dialogue with me and I suddenly stop dialoguing with you and I start beating you, what else would you do but retaliate? So this is kind of a very strange type of reaction coming from Israel and the USA, where Iran is willing to talk, Iran is willing to reopen JCPOA negotiations. They have their concerns. Those concerns were being voiced, they were being talked about. And here you suddenly find Israel, which is not at all part of the JCPOA, deciding on its own to start bombing Iran. and not only bombing Iran or its nuclear facilities, and this is something that we have seen, this unilateralism happening from Israel with many other countries, Iraq several decades back, and now Iran is being targeted, and they are not only doing that, they are targeting people. They are killing people.
They are killing people, targeting the civilian infrastructure as well. There are a number of other important aspects. Dr. Salma, I'll come back to you for your further take regarding those. We are now honored to join on the video link by Mr. Asif Durrani, former ambassador to Iran. Mr. Durrani, thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. By looking at a statement by one of the top officials from the Iranian side, that the assassination of Iran's military figures when no war was already existing and the killing of the Iranians in civilian spaces constitute blatant war crimes. How do you look at this particular statement in the light of what has happened over the last 5 days, especially due to that unilateral and illegal aggression on the part of Israel, breaching Iran's sovereignty, territorial integrity?
Thank you, Jawad. I think what Israel is doing is sheer genocide. It is an aggression which needs to be condemned, and Israel needs to be discouraged at all cost. However, unfortunately, it is enjoying the backing of the United States and Western powers, and that's why Iran has been subjected to this kind of aggression. Their top military brass was eliminated. So are their scientists. And this is a clear message to Iran that it has to fall in line. And if the irony is that Iran's those nuclear facilities have been targeted, which have been under the IAEA safeguard. So it is, in a sense, an insult to injury that IAEA, which is responsible for keeping an eye for about Iran's nuclear activities, and those facilities have been bombed. So here
this has been targeted, Mr. Durrani, and there was a statement by the Director General of International Atomic Energy Agency as well, Mr. Rafael Gross. He has also offered his good offices for all the parties to come into negotiations and resolve this nuclear issue of Iran through dialogue and through peaceful means.
Yeah, he has been forthright, and he has stated the known position adopted by the IAEA, and which should have been the case. But Israel has bypassed all those civilized ways, and it has aggressed against Iran. So problem is that it is just not Iran. It will have grave consequences for the neighborhood and beyond. And United States should realize that if Israel is not controlled, they may start aggressing towards other destinations. Already they have almost wiped out people in Raza. They have no place to hide. They have no food, and they are now dying of hunger. And this started from all Hamas attacks, and now you just see that in a 2 years' time, Israel is now emerging as the greater power in the entire Middle East, and that too through sheer force. And this is very dangerous, because the countries, if ultimately they become fed up, then it means that it would spread the conflagration, and it may have very dangerous consequences.
Dangerous consequences, of course, but how do you assess at the moment how response from the Iranian side has been so far? We look at this particular statement by one of their top leaders of the armed forces, that this particular response for Israeli regime was far beyond imagination.
Iran has so far played pragmatically, and Iran's foreign minister's statement that if Israel stops attacks, we will stop our attacks. I think that's a very clear and loud message Iran has said. And despite the fact that Iran was attacked, so normally it happens that the initiator of war, they may initiate, but ultimately they cannot end the war. It's the other side which decides whether to end the war or not.
Right, Mr. Durrani. Now, when we talk about this particular statement by President Donald Trump, when he says that he seeks a real end instead of a ceasefire, what could be the possible manifestation of this real end could be? Or what does this particular term, the real end instead of a ceasefire, does entail with it?
Well, I don't know because Mr. Trump has been changing goalposts, so one doesn't know what is in his mind. For instance, Mark Rubio, when Israel attacked, said that it was not in United States knowledge. But the very next day, Mr. Trump said that Israel has attacked Iran and it was excellent. So here, I think they are talking for cross purposes, but no one is believing that Israel took the action without taking the United States into confidence. So this is quite clear, yes.
So when the Iranians say that it couldn't be happening without the coordination from the United States and support of the United States of America, Israelis wouldn't have done it, and clearly they've got the evidence, as they say, of U.S. support to Israelis, so hence making U.S. complicit in it, right? So do we understand that Iranians might think of harming the U.S. interests in the region as well? And if that happens, by looking at that very statement by President Donald Trump, if that happens, the consequences are going to be really dangerous for Iran. Do we understand?
Yes, but at the same time,
a direct party with its troops in this particular conflict?
And but I can say that United States is not going to commit boots on the ground. And I don't think that Israelis would also be ready to do that. What they want to do is to exercise their air superiority, which they are. And they have almost paralyzed Iran's air defense system. It's a field day for Israeli aircraft to bomb wherever they want to. Unfortunately, Iran's missile defense system has not worked which it should have. It's S-300 system. I think S-400 is not installed yet, and then so they have to wait for desired results. But by then, I think it would be too late. Yes.
Right, Mr. Durrani, please stay with us. I'll come back to you for a number of other points to be discussed. Dr. Salma, now given the three dimensions of this particular conflict for President Donald Trump, as already mentioned by Gen Raza Khan as well, opposing voices from within mega group also, they don't want America to be dragged directly into this particular conflict. We've seen that staunch support on the part of Republicans for Israel, as well as that very particular pressure that's being reported from Netanyahu on President Donald Trump. Given all these factors at play, what could be the most ideal option for President Donald Trump, especially when at the very start of his presidency, at the very outset, he also said that he would be remembered with a legacy that is a peacemaker, the deal maker, and the unifier in the world. So if it is all about making a deal with Iran, what are going to be the likely, most possible and appropriate options for President Trump?
Few things that we need to clarify here is that when we ideally think that the US or President Trump and his people say that we are there to make deal and we are there to make peace, how we interpret peace and how they interpret peace are two very different things. Mm-hmm. For them, peace and making a deal and making the world most peaceful and stable is a world fashioned on their lines. Mm. And that may cause the death of umpteenth number of people without any reason. And at the end of the day, if there's a regime change, if that country collapses and they end up bringing a new country or a new system up altogether, that is also peace. So when our people very euphorically, even at the end of Pakistan-India hostility in May 2025, were even confessing, were even kind of talking about giving a Nobel Prize to President Trump for bringing Kashmir to the forefront, we shouldn't really be euphoric about it, because that is just a way to make those two countries silent and cease fire. Worked, that's great. It brought Kashmir to limelight, that's even better. But how does that translate into the Iran-Israeli question? The US has openly sided with Israel, and in case Iran, which is carrying, I absolutely agree with Ambassador Durrani, Iran is being very measured and very calculative about the type of strikes that it is doing. But in case something happens and any of the US interests are hurt, Israel can do it itself. The US can engineer such a thing itself to build a pretext to further punish Iran. Then the net result would be that Iran would be punished much further. And there would be an unleashing of complete atrocity the way they are doing it in Gaza, without any bars held, without any concern or regard to humanitarian concerns. And the way they are even bombing the nuclear installations, what they don't realize is, and then they have also bombarded Iran's oil refineries and oil dumps. And if you recall, Jawad, when the Operation Desert Storm was taking place and the Iraqi oil rigs and the Kuwaiti oil rigs were attacked, that ended up creating a climate catastrophe, which to date we haven't been able to mitigate. So what type of an impact that will have on the neighboring regions is beyond imagination.
Isn't Israel going to come into that particular fold as well?
Israel is distant? Yes, it will. But the immediate impact would be on countries such as Pakistan, Afghanistan, even the Indian Ocean, the Middle Eastern countries, which are at this moment standing by like onlookers and just looking at what is happening in Iran, and it is being punished for not being compliant. They will also come in the wrap. So we really need to actually take stock of this situation, that this is not just a question of punishing Iran because Israel and America think it is proper to do so. And also now that they're talking about the Prince Pahlavi and the king in waiting and all of those questions, a family that the Americans themselves had ousted when and not accepted when they were no longer acceptable in Iran. But we really need to see this situation that peace would come at a very heavy cost. Even if it requires a regime change, let's say hypothetically there's a regime change in Iran, that regime change will happen at a very high cost. Nearly the entire population of Iran would be wiped out before a regime change is brought into action. Iran would face massive devastation. I think the entire globe has some different misconceptions about Iran, that it is a country which, being heavily sanctioned, the most sanctioned country in the world, facing war during the decade of 80s, facing sanctions ever since, is a country which is very poor. You all need to do is go to Iran and you will find out what a beautiful country it is, how well civilized they are, how well developed they are. They have a system, they have a governance system, they have a municipality which is beyond imagination.
Right. So who is going?
And when this happens, it's going to be an extremely devastating.
Right. What's the way forward? We've seen a joint statement from many countries, including Algeria, Bahrain, Brunei, Chad, Djibouti, Iraq, Jordan, State of Kuwait, Libya, Mauritania, Republic of Pakistan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Somalia, Sudan, Turkey, Oman, and United Arab Emirates. Also, the point that you already talked about, the paramount importance of refraining from targeting nuclear facilities that are under International Atomic Energy Agency
Absolutely.
safeguards. This is a joint statement. The way you have described, It makes huge sense. The people sitting at the hem, when we talk about the Western powers, the G summit just happened. They talked of the de-escalation, rather they stopped short of calling for a ceasefire.
Which is a shame.
So what's the way forward in that
I
sort
think
of
the way
scenario?
forward is for some countries to be more courageous. I think the G7, where Japan was very categorical in condemning Israel for its action, these countries actually need to come forward and they must say that immediate ceasefire is required for global peace, global sanctity, global sanity, and Israel needs to back off. The US needs to take a very neutral and objective stance, and just for the sake of global peace, global stability, future world order, just say that this is the end of it. Iran, do not do what you need to do, instead of giving them these silly signals. Basically, this is playing a psychological game with Iran. America is not vacating any of its interest from there, although they are out of those places in any case. They are not brave enough to do that. But what they are actually aiming to do is to give the type of signaling to Iran where Iranians would be terrified of the consequences. This is all a psychological play. And so long as they keep on playing these psychological games, they think that Iran would be deterred from carrying out certain things. Iran is not going to back off. It's kind of a fight for their survival. And when you're pushed to the end and you're fighting for your survival, then there are no bars left. Then you fight to the end, because you know that's the only way to fight.
Right. Mr. Ambassador Durrani, now Russia has offered to provide mediation services necessary, but at the same time the Kremlin spokesperson says we see reluctance on part of Israel. Do you think any of such mediation efforts, which are of course badly required at this particular point in time, with reluctance from one side, do you think there is any sort of a plausible possibility that this sort of a mediation could work at the moment?
I think the responsibility lies with the United States. It has to tell Israel, and I think there's a better chemistry between President Trump and President Putin, and they both can work together, and I think that can work. But Israel is right now playing a spoiler's role, and they want to squeeze Iran to the maximum. Here I want to add that we should not forget about the resilience of Iran. It fought with Saddam Hussein for 8 years, and we shouldn't forget that even then Iran was alone, and the entire world, especially the US and West, were with Saddam Hussein. But they continued the war for 8 years. So even now, Iran may be down, but Iran is certainly not out. Iran has the necessary wherewithal, despite the fact that they are under sanctions, despite the fact that over $60 billion worth of Iranian assets are frozen outside Iran. Iran has survived. And Iran has...
On the video link, Mr. Asif Durrani, former ambassador to Iran, thank you very much for being with us. I really seek your pardon for the interjection here. I'll have to wrap the show right at this particular moment. Dr. Salma, Malik, foreign affairs expert, joining us in the studio. Thank you very much for your time also, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.